aspects, more particularly quality assurance in relation to cross-border education, and we are glad to have as an expert Rafael Llavori with us, who is a board member of ENQA and thus fully qualified to raise the topic of quality assurance with regard to cross-border education. We'll just see, wait a moment until the slides are ready.
Okay, it's ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to attend this conference today. And I'm especially happy and the pleasure is bigger because I'm acting on behalf of ENQA in my native city in Madrid. Excuse me. So now I think we are moving to the rhetorics of quality assurance, and mainly from the perspective of the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education in Europe, ENQA, that I'm representing. And well, this is the table of contents that I will go through this conference, and mainly from the perspective of the regional quality assurance network that I'm representing here, but also paying attention to the national preoccupation on quality assurance related to cross-border higher education. And finally, I will pay some attention to some conclusions from, again, the perspective of the regional quality assurance networks. So okay. So first of all, let me begin with a certain naive approach showing two perspectives of cross-border higher education that will provide with a common denominator to my presentation this afternoon. I would like to focus on the traditional pessimist or negative viewpoint that could be quoted as follows. To prevent cross-border higher education could prevent the circulation of low-quality programs offered, or even the direct business of selling degrees by dubious providers or degree mills. This could be the pessimistic or the negative one. On the other hand, optimist and positive could be considered to foster internationalization as an opportunity for higher education and higher education systems, higher education institutions and systems to strive for excellence, display it internationally, and get benefit in terms of attracting students and or exporting higher education provision in various ways. So both perspectives reflect partially reality and live together either in time or space. They are also related to two different quality assurance or accreditation approaches. The first one is very often shown displaying accreditation or quality assurance certificates offered by accreditation mills, and it will not be the focus of my presentation this afternoon. This presentation will deal with a second perspective from the regional, or in this case the European approach, going beyond the national setting. Both approaches could be called, if you allow me, as a Janus dilemma, from the two-faced Roman god Janus, whose temple gates were closed in times of peace and open where the conflict was started, although probably this ancient meaning does not match exactly with our intentions today. But the analogy seems adequate, how we can face cross-border higher education mainly from the quality assurance perspective, from the point of view of this Roman deity. So if we move to the regional quality assurance framework of cross-border higher education, unlike other regions of the world, such as Latin America or Asia Pacific, the risk of cross-border higher education in Europe is not primarily represented by bogus institutions landing in a particular country or acting as a degree mill, although it could happen to some extent, of course. The main risk perceived by governments and quality assurance agencies is from institutions coming from countries with a recognized higher education quality brand, offering qualifications associated to that brand, but without matching the quality of those delivered at the home institution, both in terms of program curriculum or academic staff conditions. Oh, sorry, something happened. It went to to the end, sorry. It seems I have a wooden finger rather than any, and it makes some complications, sorry for. Well, it doesn't work. Okay. Something's happening to the presentation, I'm sorry. It's the thank you is not yet. Okay. Well, here it is. Here it is. Sorry. As I said, if we pay attention to this problem, perceived from the European perspective, as I say, we could consider as a flagship effect of this kind of quality institutions coming from prestigious settings, instead of having the negative effect of the Jolly Roger effect, which is the one which I explained before. It's not what we really perceive as a problem directly in Europe right now. But the paradox from the point of view of the quality assurance agencies and networks could be the risk that quality assurance in cross-border higher education could come from a national quality assurance system and the national legal framework, which could set up fences to defend the system from rogue higher education practices and providers, and actually hinder the different forms of internationalization of higher education practices, where this danger is not even foreseen. That's, from our point of view, the problem, one of the problems that quality assurance agencies and networks could danger in this context. So the national requirements turn into a sort of protection barrier for the bona fide provider, while has few effects for the bogus institutions who choose directly illegal means. So we need to really focus on the usefulness of quality assurance mechanisms at the national level to avoid putting these problems for those nice and clear providers. So national systems and legal frameworks can contribute to either favor or constrain cross-border higher education. But as it has been very often repeated in the specialized literature, internationalization of higher education is a manifold phenomenon which will prevail in our systems and in the future. A phenomenon that can flood national QA bodies and systems, emptying up their meaning, or what could be even worse, creating a sort of a QA double ethos or double moral for national institutions and special procedures, or not procedures at all, for cross-border higher education providers. This situation could contribute to create a cynical compliance for the quality assurance policy for national institutions and a sort of a cash and carry higher education business for those institutions and students that can afford it, very often sailing under utterly trustworthy higher education flags, which is the most important thing from our point of view. A way for national quality assurance systems to force and favor internationalization of quality assurance practices consists in developing the concept of division of labor applied to the quality assurance requirements at the national level. This division of labor means that the providers must emphasize the transparency indicators of the programs and the corresponding diplomas awarded, especially about the value of the diploma and the recognition associated to it, at both the national setting of the provider and at the national level where the provision is rendered. Transparency means essential information to the public, students, families, society as a whole, but also to the official authorities, the Ministry of Education or the body with competences in higher education, recognition bodies, quality assurance agencies, etc. It implies a sort of social contract, despite it might deal with the provision of a public good through private or even for-profit means, or with a certain trade of services, according to the GATS agreement. Business does not mean at all lack of transparency or ethics. It seems that social contract and cross-border higher education are opposite categories, but we should think about the number of multinational corporations worldwide investing resources to show that they respect certain international accepted ethical labor conditions in their offshore factories, especially concerning infantile labor, to put a conspicuous example to this context. So this contract should take the shape of a code of good practices, such as the UNESCO OECD guidelines, or the code of good practices developed within the context of the Lisbon Recognition Convention in Riga in 2001. But probably it has a simple national patterns and deal with a particular dialogue between the provider and the national quality assurance authority, as it has been mentioned by the previous speaker. I would like to give you a short example from Spain. In this case, the mandatory program accreditation framework applies only for those official degrees. The concept of official, in this case, comes from outside the higher education institution, like in other countries. And it's due to the particular tradition that emphasizes the official nature of the degree close to the government. Therefore, if a prestigious international higher education wants to provide its own programs and award its own degrees, it is not linked to any mandatory accreditation procedure. The institution has the legal authorization by the corresponding body to operate, and no fraud is involved, so it's a complete legal operation. But the public interest depends on the current information provided by the institution concerning the validity of its degrees in the country of origin, for instance, in this case. Therefore, certain insecurity in terms of information for students could happen, and that's, we think, the role for quality assurance agencies to try to amend this lack of information. So this example could be placed on the other opposite way when these institutions go abroad and offer these non-official degrees as well. But moving to the main document dealing with the quality assurance of cross-border higher education is the UNESCO OECD guidelines for quality provision. I won't go into details in this document, but there are some guidelines addressing QA accreditation bodies, as we can see in the well, I think that it skips some. I don't know how to go backwards, sorry, but it goes on the right. But in any case, I would like to quote, and again, let's go to the thank you, and let's start over again. No, I don't know what happens. Anyway, we can, just to avoid to get stuck to this. Let's see, because I wanted to quote the. If there is someone from the organization, I would be very grateful, to avoid going to the thank you every single moment. So, let's see. Okay, thank you. Sorry. So if we look at this guideline, we can identify as the guidelines is addressing the quality assurance and accreditation bodies in order to strengthen the existing regional and international networks. That is, for us, one of the most important parts of this document, which networks, quality assurance networks, can play a relevant part in providing the quality assurance of cross-border higher education. But they are also addressed in order to improve the transparency and the information about these reputable providers, creating what has been called within the UNESCO and in the ENQA quality assurance network a white list rather than blacklist, trying to identify those rogue providers. So, but the guidelines, there is another reference to quality assurance networks in order to the relevance and the significance to set up criteria and assessment procedures, joint assessment projects to improve quality assurance of cross-border higher education. And this is a practical work that must be done by quality assurance networks all over the world. But if we go for a while to the first statement I made at the beginning of the presentation about a regional approach to quality assurance of cross-border higher education, what does a regional approach mean? From our point of view, global phenomenon needs a multinational regional analysis and response. ENQA, the organization I'm representing here, is the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, includes 36 quality assurance or accreditation agencies, specialized or professional-oriented, that have all accomplished external review against the European standards and guidelines, which is one of the most important tools for quality assurance set up within the, as you know, within the European higher education area. As we see, the quality assurance in the European higher education area is organized. Of course, quality, it's up to the institutions, and it's the business of the institutions to define it. Of course, universities work at the national higher education system, dealing with the quality assurance, national quality assurance framework. But we have at the European level, as most of you know, the quality assurance network that has the commitment from the ministers to conduct the reviews of quality assurance agencies against the European standards and guidelines, and also the register, the European Register for Quality Assurance Agencies, and I will pay some attention to this body later on. So this would be the structure of the quality assurance system in Europe. But the European standards and guidelines were written before the Unesco OECD guidelines. But as we can, if we pay attention to the contents, there is the UNESCO document is to some extent bearing in mind the European document. Therefore, we can conclude that the European Quality Assurance Framework, represented by ENQA as a regional network, and the European standards and guidelines written by a combination of the stakeholders, students, universities, higher education institutions, non-university higher education institutions and agencies, organized the contents of this document, which deals with the different criteria related to quality assurance for the institutions. In the part number 1, the external processes of quality assurance, in the part number 2, and the part number 3 devoted to the quality assurance, the external reviews of the quality assurance agencies. That's the contents of this document. So we can consider this document as one of the most important ones from quality assurance within the different networks all over the world, because it is the product of the different stakeholders dealing with higher education at the European level. And it was written only 1 year before that the UNESCO OECD guidelines. But the mandate of the ministers to use the external review of quality assurance agencies against the European standards and guidelines as a conditio sine qua non to become listed in the European register, and for ENQA to acquire the full membership of this organization, turned the European standards and guidelines into a powerful tool to identify trustworthy quality assurance agencies, or a bona fide mechanism to improve transparency and accountability to the quality assurance system in the European higher education area. Right now, there are voices within the European higher education area claiming for a more active role to be played by the register in terms of becoming a tool to favor recognition in Europe in terms of quality assurance, intra and inter-regional. This gatekeeper role regarding quality assurance overseas could be reasonably discussed when a sufficient number of applications from agencies from overseas will occur. But as a theoretical challenge, it is interesting to think about this scenario in some years ahead. The Bucharest Communique of Ministers, the last one provided by the Bologna process in April 2012, emphasizes explicitly the role of quality assurance as essential for building trust and to reinforce the attractiveness of the European higher education areas offering, including in the provision of cross-border higher education. That's why in the late 2 or 3 communique of ministers derived from the Bologna follow-up group meetings, cross-border higher education and the quality provision for cross-border higher education has been mentioned explicitly. Mobility is also at the heart of the higher education area in terms of cross-border higher education, as this can be read in the communique. Learning mobility is essential to ensure the quality of higher education enhance students' employability, and expand cross-border collaboration within the European higher education area and beyond, which is another particularity of this communique. That you know that it establishes not only the goals but also the work done and the work already consolidated in the 2 or 3 years between meetings. The next one, as you know, will take place in 2015 in Yerevan in Armenia. To this regard, it is important for the development of the cross-border higher education the emphasis made on the relationship between the European higher education area and other regions of the world, relying on QA to improve this goal. So the explicit support to the European register in the communique shows also that the ministers considers the register as a potential device to favor transparency within the European higher education area, but also as a practical tool towards simplifying the national protection requirements for opening the external QA processes to any agency listed, either European or overseas. To this respect, the communiqué says, we welcome the external evaluation of EQUAR, and we encourage quality assurance agencies to apply for registration. We will allow EQUAR registered agencies to perform their activities across the European higher education area, while complying with national requirements. That's a difficult balance, and sometimes make a lot of noise in terms of protecting national higher education against international providers. But the communique says we will aim to recognize quality assurance decisions of EQUAR registered agencies on joint and double degree programs, another kind of international provision and cross-border higher education. This set of statements concerning the register reinforces the possible role of this body as a facilitator to favor international evaluations within the national quality assurance systems, and therefore it can contribute to smoothen in the short term the resistances of national higher education systems towards different cross-border higher education provisions. It might therefore strengthen the European dimension through the European standards and guidelines as the vehicle for external quality assurance processes, as a way to embed the national criteria as well. The key issue to achieve this role is to increase the number of non-European agencies listed in EQUAR. Let's see how EQUAR and its agenda evolve in the near future in this direction. Now let's come back for a while to the national perspective, come back to the roots of quality assurance system. Because the quality assurance of cross-border higher education needs also to be reflected from the national perspective. Eventually, every cross-border higher education provision will be accomplished at the national level of a third country. Therefore, the national quality assurance or accreditation framework will be necessarily involved or omitted, but explicitly omitted. In the European higher education area, the accreditation-focused quality assurance systems pay a lot of attention to accountability processes as a sort of public information or protection divide at the expense of quality improvement in many cases, or at least of the innovative potential of the programs. This could be one of the opinions set up by many higher education managers throughout Europe. But the current, and could be not recognized by the experts from the quality assurance agencies, but the current situation of the problem of recognition in Europe, the recognition of qualifications within the European higher education area, could be a good argument in favor of this critique, to be skeptical at least. So let's see how quality assurance agencies and their networks can overcome these barriers to quality assurance of cross-border higher education. By means of the strict application of quality assurance systems in place, national quality assurance systems could constrain higher education offer at cross-border, with their only fair providers and provision in a context of internationalization of higher education. This paradox works against the international profile of most of the European quality assurance agencies, which work according to the rules of the European higher education area, and they strive after internationalization of their respective higher education system. Many quality assurance agencies in Europe have made a huge effort in overcoming the obstacle derived from the national legal frameworks to favor mutual recognition. And the work done by the European Consortium of Accreditation, ECA, in this regard since its creation in 2003, I think must be emphasized. And I will come back to this consortium later in my presentation. Quality assurance networks can strive for a balance between public interest through information coming from official bodies, improving evidence trust among systems, and avoiding the traditional barriers and difficulties to internationalization of higher education in all its various forms. Quality assurance networks can support cross-border higher education through their processes of mutual recognition amongst quality assurance agencies, bilaterally between quality assurance agency X and Y, as it happens traditionally, or by means of multilateral agreements, such as the case of ECA in Europe and the project on mutual recognition agreements focusing in the recognition of accreditation and accreditation-like results among different agencies. When scenarios of mutual recognition occur, like in ECA in Europe, ENQA at the global level, or APQN in the Asia-Pacific setting, the circumstances within the regional network should favor the quality assurance of cross-border higher education, whatever shape it adopts. Again, the national quality assurance agencies, as members of these networks, can easily put forward the agreements, not to cede national competences, but to share responsibility by means of the agreements signed among them. What is ENQA's proposal for improving quality assurance of cross-border higher education? There is no blueprint at all, but ENQA shares the opinion of other quality assurance agencies networks throughout the world that QA networks can provide with a useful framework to create favorable conditions for good practices in cross-border higher education. Networks can also act as an active clearinghouse to promote transparency and share information about the higher education systems. ENQA has not launched any mutual recognition initiative, and I think it is not necessary at all. Why? Firstly, because the external reviews of the European quality assurance agencies act as a sort of trustworthy network, which can be used as a vehicle towards further agreements for recognition. Secondly, because in the European higher education area, the Lisbon Recognition Convention is mandatory and has been signed and endorsed by the Bologna countries, although still it is not in force at all. Therefore, ENQA should align its strategy concerning recognition in the terms defined by the Lisbon Recognition Convention. But there is a need to clarify still the roles played by ENQA and EQUAR concerning the quality assurance agencies' reviews to avoid duplicity of procedures or confusion among the stakeholders. So this is just to remind all of you the different documents related to the Lisbon Recognition Convention since its approval in 1999. So let's go to some quality assurance technicalities. I would like to give some examples of good practices where recognition and simplification of accreditation procedures is taking place throughout the world, at least at the level of pilot projects coordinated by quality assurance agencies. The examples range from Europe to Latin America and the global context, represented in this case by the international network ENQA. So let's have a look to the European Consortium of Accreditation, the JOCAR project funded by the European Commission, which stands for Joint Programs, Quality Assurance and Recognition of Degrees Awarded. The overall purpose of the project is to ensure that Erasmus Mundus programs and joint programs in general are facilitated in two specific areas, accreditation and recognition. The project partnership consequently includes quality assurance, accreditation agencies, but also recognition bodies and ICNARICs. I will not go into details, but in the website there is plenty of information about it. The results of this project, which is in the last year, will be discussed in the dissemination conference that will take place here in Madrid on the 20th and 21st of June this year. Another example comes from Latin America, the Alpha Puentes project, which is a project coordinated by the European University Association, and it focuses on capacity building amongst the university associations in Latin America to promote regional higher education integration policies. One of the strands of the project, the one which is interested for quality assurance networks, deals with pilot projects on accreditation procedures at the sub-regional level involving international experts to favor the recognition of quality assurance procedures in the Andean region, one of the sub-regions in Latin America. And we took part in one of these pilots representing the Association of Quality Assurance Agencies. The third example comes from ENQA, the international network at the global level, which has developed a working group on mutual recognition within its board, and is in charge of reflecting on the possibility to improve these scenarios between different regions, not only within Europe or within Latin America, but between both regions. Within this framework, we are developing 2 projects of mutual recognition with the Colombian Accreditation Council, CNA, and the Costa Rican Accreditation Agency, because both of them have accomplished external reviews coordinated by ENQA against the guidelines of good practice of this organization, with an international panel of experts and international criteria. So from this point of view, they match the procedure we are running in Europe. So we can think about going closer in terms of recognition coming from the experience of these reviews, as the European quality assurance agencies have experienced these procedures. It's not difficult to think about going that far in terms of mutual recognition of their accreditation results, because the recognition of the degree usually belongs to the Ministry of the recognition bodies in the different countries. But what we want to show is that quality assurance agencies and networks can demonstrate that there is no substantial obstacle towards mutual recognition of accreditation results from agencies already reviewed within international settings. In this very case, the outcome will be a bilateral agreement, probably not enough ambitious for a cross-border higher education perspective, but a good opportunity to knock down some barriers, at least mental barriers for the governments in the different countries. Finally, another example, well, these are the references and the websites, and if you go to the presentation later on, you can find it easily. So, although it is in Spanish, this is a table made by Guy Alterman, former board of directors of NDAO from the Flemish part, where he tried to demonstrate that most of the international networks of quality assurance criteria share a lot of commonalities, and they focus on mainly the same criteria in the different settings at the global level in ENQA, at the European one, another European one represented by ECA, or the guidelines from OECD, UNESCO, or the Asia-Pacific Quality Assurance Network as well. So most of the criteria are included in the different frameworks. So there is no wonder at all that we can think about mutual recognition and going further using the different quality assurance, regional quality assurance criteria. Let me go to another example, which is, well, this should be the sort of staircase for mutual recognition, because it is not sufficient at all. It's a necessary condition, but not sufficient to establish this mutual recognition agreement. We need to go into details in the procedures, to exchange observers, and to work to work closely throughout different procedures to be sure that we share most of these commonalities and no any substantial difference occurs within both agencies. As I told you, finally, I would like to mention another example, a good practice to promote quality assurance in cross-border higher education, provided by the World Bank and UNESCO through the GQAC project. GQAC stands for Global Initiative for Quality Assurance Capacity, to support higher education in developing countries and in countries in transition. GQAC assisted emerging quality assurance systems in building capacity by sharing information on good practices worldwide, facilitating communication among the diverse set of agencies and professionals, and supporting the production of reports and guidelines. It allowed setting up different projects in Europe. ENQA ran one of these projects for the Balkans, or also for the Caucasus region, but also the other quality assurance networks ran similar projects in Asia Pacific, for the African Quality Assurance Network, the Arab Network for Quality Assurance in Higher Education on Quaje, and the Ibero-American Network for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. At least this was a very, very fruitful initiative led by UNESCO following the funding of the World Bank. Finally, I would like to stress some of the conclusions of this reflection from the regional quality assurance networks on the quality assurance of cross-border higher education. Again, it's a perspective from the regional setting rather from the national quality assurance agencies. But the last one was, no, but it was, no, I think we need to go. I promise you it's the last one, so there is no opportunity for another mistake with this digital. Okay, national quality assurance agencies should provide with updated information in their website about good practices in quality assurance of cross-border higher education gathered from the networks of agencies. This is a very, very simple statement, but it deals with information, gathering information, using quality assurance agencies' websites as an information source regarding cross-border higher education and quality assurance provision. So this is something that we can do at the micro level, at the level of our national context, to promote and to foster the quality assurance of cross-border higher education. The second one is to remove national barriers. How can we do it? I think to set up task forces involving representatives of the Ministry of Education, Foreign Affairs, Border Police representatives, quality assurance agencies, recognition bodies, and rectors, conferences, or associations of universities that should be set up to discuss the current difficulties as well as to define the agenda to progress in the quality assurance of cross-border higher education. This is a joint effort and cannot be done only by quality assurance agencies or networks or institutions in an isolated way. The example provided by the United Kingdom, it's a very useful one in terms of collective effort, despite there could be detailed problems raised by the previous speaker. But that's something that we should bear in mind in other countries to follow. The existing international discipline-oriented or program-oriented accreditation procedures worldwide, such as ABET, EQUIS, or many others, discipline-oriented, could be involved in the process as a way to ensure trustworthy cross-border higher education, and could be also easily accredited by international bodies and by international networks. It would allow quality assurance agencies focusing on the national threshold in terms of consistency of the cross-border higher education providers as a whole from an institutional or audit approach, giving again consistency to the quality assurance processes and reassuring the national stakeholders about the soundness of the provision. This approach implies a more efficient and cost-effective procedure for the national quality assurance, maintaining the national scrutiny for those issues directly related to public interest in the country, and sharing or leaving the academic quality assurance of the programs to the responsibility of the higher education institution and the accreditation international bodies that could be possibly listed in the register, European register, in the European case. The adequate development of what we could call Bologna tools could be a way to advance in the solution of the problems on quality assurance arising within the cross-border higher education, both the negative from dubious institutions and the positive derived from the lack of alignment with national requirements. But again, this is a perspective from the European theatre. But for example, the promotion of the diploma supplement as a useful tool for transparency of qualifications, mobility and employability at the graduate level is a good minor example, if we could call it, of practical solutions on cross-border higher education. Finally, and I will only mention it because I give up completely to the technicalities, sorry. The last one is the Qualifications Framework. can play a much broader and relevant part in cross-border higher education as transparency tools in both the sending and the receiving country. The widespread of qualifications framework all over the world might be a practical and useful tool towards the strengthening of higher education areas and recognition scenarios. The Bucharest Communique also emphasizes the role of this tool to improve transparency as something essential to recognition for both academic and professional purposes. So we think that qualifications frameworks and the other Bologna tools could really contribute to to improve the quality assurance of the cross-border higher education. And finally, I would like to say that Europe should give an example and take the lead in showing other regions that the correct articulation of the Bologna tools discussed among the higher education stakeholders provide clear outcomes for the quality assurance of cross-border higher education, because we have all these instruments working and enforced in our different countries. The European higher education area for more than a decade has contributed not only to set up a real higher education setting, but also allowed and foster what we could call biodiversity in terms of higher education system and academic traditions. So that's as a final desire, we could say, let's work together to maintain this unique feature with the promotion of fair quality assurance processes in cross-border higher education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Llavori, for your overview of the quality assurance issues in cross-border education. In fact, we can allow maybe for one question. The technical problems apparently took up some of the question time during this slot, but you will have a chance during the panel, of course, to continue with. Do I see a raised hand right now? John Riley, but please be short, John.
Impossible.
I know, but try.
I will try.
Try, okay.
I thought it was marvelous that you put up a regional dimension, because surely one of the things we should be acclaiming is that we have the largest transnational higher education program in the world. It's Erasmus. And there's a big challenge within Erasmus for quality assurance agencies, and it's the use of ECTS and the credits and the recognition of credits. And my question that I want to ask is, why is ENQA not addressing this major recognition question, and why is the review of the quality, the standards and guidelines not being put together with the review of ECTS, so that we can get a qualifications and credits framework for the EU, rather than two separate operations which may end up not producing what we really need. But please, when we're talking about trans-frontier education, why not mention Erasmus, which has got a phenomenal story to tell about real collaboration and cooperation and mobility of students.
Okay, thank you. A rather short question that merits a long answer, but still, could you try to make the answer short?
No, as I'm not using this device, I can assure you a short answer. No, thank you for the question, and that's part of a reflection we should do within the ENQA board and also within ENQA as an organization. ECTS is another of the Bologna tools that can benefit a lot from this perspective. But of course, the whole agenda is being pursued by ENQA, and that there are still parts of these tools that have not yet been explored from the ENQA perspective. But we are also waiting for the results of the groups working with ECTS, also to take it into account with our organization. Sorry? You should be driving that. Yeah, but we cannot drive all the vehicles. I mean, we were addressed by the Bucharest Communique in dealing with a certain set of urgent issues, and we are facing them. We are small board in a small organization, a huge one in terms of members, but we cannot deal with all the issues. It is not an evasive answer, but I will take it to the board and to the board meeting this week that will take place at the end of this week. But of course, I did mention Erasmus, because Erasmus for quality assurance, Erasmus program for quality assurance agencies have been a real laboratory to explore innovation in terms of accreditation, single accreditation of joint programs. So for us, Erasmus has been the best possible laboratory, and we collaborated with the European Commission because through different projects funded by the Commission in the Erasmus Mundus and in the Tempus programs to explore the accreditation, the single accreditation of joint programs funding by the Commission. So Erasmus Masters have been for us a very powerful tool to explore and to advance and simplify accreditation procedures in Europe.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now let you have your coffee break. Please be back at 4:45. Has Mr.
Excuse me?
Has Mr. McCoshen arrived in the meantime?
Yeah, just a question. We got the coffee break now, but regarding the dinner tonight, as someone said to you before, dinner is going to be at 8:30. You got here the address. But the university has also organized a walking guide tour from the meeting point, from the bus meeting point, from Plaza Cánovas del Castillo. There are a few professional